Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we have another news rumor video here to discuss. In today's video, we're looking at some signings, injury updates, some recalls, reassignments, roster movements, some pieces of news, and some trade rumors involving the Preds, Canucks, and Sharks. I'll touch on all of this coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. Once again, if you haven't already, leave a like down below, hit the subscribe button, tell all your friends the best hockey content on YouTube is right here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. So I really do appreciate all the support you guys, but 90% of you guys who view my videos are not subscribed. So if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. It really does help with the channel. We're trying to hit 650 in the very near future, and we're trying to hit 1,000 eventually. So it really does help with the channel. On top of that, don't forget to stay tuned for my live stream later today, as I will be live streaming the Utah-Vegas Game 2. So if that's something you guys seem to be interested in, check it out. And then we'll also have one later this week at 8 p.m. on Thursday and at 8 p.m. Mountain Time on Friday, doing the Colorado-Los Angeles Game 3 and the Anaheim-Edmonton Game 3 live streams. We'll have some more next week, just don't know all the details yet. So stay tuned for that. And don't forget to stay tuned for other videos coming out in the very near future. So we have a trade rumor video here to discuss. There are 4 signings from our past couple of days. We're just going to get through them quickly here. That's where we're going to start in this video. So first, Garrett Brown, who's a 22-year-old right shot defenseman, was a 2022 fourth-round pick of the Winnipeg Jets, has signed his 2-year ELC with Winnipeg with an AAV of $1.05 million that begins the start of next season. So not a bad pickup here for Winnipeg. Brown looks like a decent player. He had been playing over in the NCAA, putting up 2 goals and 14 points in 34 NCAA games. So solid sign there from the Jets. Maybe eventually Brown could be like a third pair defenseman, but he's probably going to need a couple more years of development time. So very interesting note there. But Garrett Brown has signed an ELC with Winnipeg. So has former first-round pick, I think, in this past year's draft, Roger McQueen. The forward, very versatile guy. He's 19 years old. He was the first-round pick in this past year's draft, 20th overall in the 2025 draft. He gets a 3-year ELC AAV of $1.075 million. They'll begin at the start of next season. So a really good pickup here for the Ducks. McQueen, I think, maybe next year or potentially the year after away from making the NHL lineup. He's a really solid hockey player. So a smart move here from Anaheim to sign him. He's been playing over in the NCAA as well, putting up 11 goals and 27 points in 36 games. So McQueen's looking fantastic, and I think he's going to be a force, whether it's next year or the following season for the Anaheim Ducks. So smart move there to sign him. And then we also saw 2 players get contract extensions. Pending UFA Cole Koepke, who signed in the offseason with the Winnipeg Jets, actually turned into a really solid fourth liner. He is a winger. He's 27 years old. He gets a 2-year contract extension with an AAV of $1.45 million. So it's not someone who's going to put you up a whole bunch of points, but he can chip in offensively. He's very hard to play against. He's a really, really good fourth liner. This past year, he put up 8 goals and 17 points in 66 games, which isn't half bad. So not a bad pickup here. Low-end deal if they need to bury him. That contract's almost all variable. And if they don't need to bury him, then he's playing really well at the fourth line minutes. So very good stuff there. But Koepke has signed an extension in Winnipeg. And then we saw the Dallas Stars sign an extension as well. And that was with Nils Lundqvist, a 25-year-old right-shot defenseman who was an RFA. He gets a 2-year extension with an AAV of $1.75 million. So not a bad pickup here for the Stars. Lundqvist looks like a really solid player. Still a very decent third-pair guy. Maybe eventually could be a second-pair guy, but still at this point in time, more of a third-pair guy. I mean, he had 3 goals and 11 points in 52 games, so not bad. Still more of a third-pair guy, but maybe eventually could be a second-pair guy. So some very interesting signings. Not a bad pickup here for the Stars. They had Lundqvist extended, and then we also saw Koepke get extended, Brown sign his ELC, and McQueen sign his ELC. So some very interesting contract extensions from our past couple of days. Next, going over to a couple of injury updates. Jason Dickinson, who missed the last 3 regular season games with a leg injury, and Leon Draisaitl, who missed the last 14 games regular season with the injury, were both activated off of long-term injury reserve, and Dickinson just got back in, and both played yesterday in Game 1. So some very big additions here for the Oilers to get their superstar Leon Draisaitl. Jason Dickinson, who had 2 goals yesterday, back into the lineup. So some really good stuff there for Edmonton. Roope Hansen-Dallas has been ruled out for Game 3 for the Dallas Stars with lower body injury. He is still yet to play in the playoffs, has missed a couple of games leading up to the playoffs, so not great news there. Andrei Kuzmenko, who missed a month and a half with a knee injury, was actually off of injury reserve and returned to game action. I think in Game 1, he might have been a healthy scratch, but I'm not exactly sure. But he was at least healthy for Game 1, whether he did play or not, so good stuff there for Los Angeles. Zach Bogosian, who missed 2 weeks with lower body injury, returned in Game 1, while Matt Zuccarello was injured injured in Game 1 and missed Game 2 for the Minnesota Wild with upper body injury and is out day. So hopefully Zuccarello is able to get back in the very near future, but good to see Zach Bogosian got back from Minnesota. Artem Zub left Game 1 for the Ottawa Senators with undisclosed injury and didn't return and missed Game 2, so that was a bad blow. And Tyler Cleveland missed both Game 1 and Game 2 for Ottawa with upper body injury, but could return later in the series. So good news for Cleveland. They should be able to get back at some point later on, but a bad blow there is they lost one of their best defensive defensemen, Artem Zub. I wonder if he'll be ready for Game 3 on Thursday. So very interesting note there. Emil Andrea also missed Game 2 for the Philadelphia Flyers with upper body injury and is out day, so hopefully nothing too serious, as Andrea was a pretty decent third pair defenseman before he got injured. Victor Hedman, who missed last month with a personal leave and illness, will travel with Tampa to Montreal and could return later in round 1, but is still a little bit off. So he might be able to return if the series goes like 6 or 7 games, or if the Tampa Bay advances to round 2. But very interesting note there that Hedman is working towards getting back. Dominic James, who missed a month and a half with a leg injury, returned to game action for Game 1, so that was a big boost for the Bolts to get James back. And Charlie Diastis left Game 1 with an undisclosed injury and will miss Game 2 because of it. So not great news there. That's bad for Tampa, as Diastis has had himself one heck of a good season. And then Rasmus Sandin will miss the start of the 26-27 season with a knee injury. So not great news there for the Washington Capitals. They'll be starting a defender down to start next season. So not great news there. But some very interesting injury updates from our past couple of days. Next, going over to a couple of recalls and reassignments. When it comes to some recalls, the Avs recalled Posh, the Stars recalled Cross, and the Kings recalled Copley, just to provide some added goalie depth at the NHL level. The Wild recalled Albuquerque, Haight, Lambos, Jones, Spacek, Mercer, and Wutsuki. Once again, provide some extra depth at the NHL level. The Sens recalled Kaliev, Boucher, Bourgault, Clark, Yakimchuk, Peterson, once again to add some more extra depth at the NHL level. The Flyers recalled Bonk and Juracek, provide some extra depth at the NHL level. The Bulls recalled Geeky, Halverson, to once again provide some more depth at the NHL level. And the Mammoth recalled Gazino, Hebig, McCartney, Lamoureux, Susber, Perunovic, and Stauber, once again to provide some more added depth at the NHL level. So some of those playoff teams just wanted to add some more extra depth, so they called up a handful of their AHL players. So very interesting to note there. And then when it comes to some reassignments, the Jets reassigned Yeager and Lambert to help their AHL affiliates on a playoff push. So not too surprising there. Yeager and Lambert could probably use some more experience at the AHL level anyways. So not bad there. And those two will be part of a playoff push in Manitoba. So very interesting note there. And then on waivers, we did see one player be placed on and clear waivers from our past couple of days, and that was Michael Pezzetta. Pezzetta had been playing at the NHL level, but needed to clear waivers to be sent back down to play at the AHL level with the Toronto Marlies, and he did, so not surprising there. He'll go and play with the Marlies for the rest of the AHL season, but not too surprising there that that's what happened for Michael Pezzetta, so very interesting note there. Just a couple of really quick things here when it comes to potential things from around the NHL. When it comes to some open GM possibilities, Toronto is interested in Al's assistant GM Ryan Downes and Stars assistant GM Scott White for the new GM job, and Nashville is interested in Rangers assistant GM Martin as well as former Devils GM Fitzgerald for their new GM job. So once again, the Leafs and the Preds are both looking for a whole bunch of candidates. Patrick Allvin was also recently fired, so the Canucks are going to have to be looking for a new GM as well. I think I didn't mention that. Yeah, Allvin is fired in Vancouver, so the Canucks are going to be looking for a new GM along with Toronto and Nashville. So those are some very interesting candidates. Assistant GM in NYI in Dallas is who the Leafs have interest in. Assistant GM in New York, plus the former Devils GM is who the Preds have some interest in. So very interesting candidates. We'll see who ends up getting those jobs, but those are some of the interesting candidates for the Leafs and the Predators. Also, Sonny Mehta, who I did mention in a couple of trade rumor videos ago, was getting interviewed by a couple of teams, has been announced as the new GM in New Jersey. I don't think I mentioned that yet. So Mehta is going to get an opportunity to be the Devils GM and rework that team and try to make them a little bit better. So former assistant GM in Florida is going to New Jersey. Still very interesting to note there. According to some other recent reports, there's some things about some players. I think it was David Pagnotta who mentioned that Ferraro is very likely to test the free agency market. There's still a possibility he could sign an extension in San Jose, and it doesn't sound like Ferraro has ruled it out, but it sounds like at this point in time, all the signs point to Ferraro leaving as a free agent and testing the free agent market, especially in what is more of a weak defensive free agent class. It's not a bad move there if Ferraro does wind up doing that. Soderstrom, who's playing in Boston or in the AHL Bruins, and Milano, who is under contract with Washington, are both linked to be going to the Swiss League in the offseason. Both of them, I think, have their contracts expiring, so it sounds like they'll both most likely go over to the Swiss League to continue their careers. It's not official yet or anything, but it sounds like those two are going to be headed overseas. And Toews is unsure of retirement at this point in time. He has not said if he's going to retire, and this was his last season. He's unsure about 17 season. So, interesting note there, Toews might be back for one more season, but he might not be. So, we'll have to wait a little bit longer to find out what's happening with Toews. For the time being, Jonathan Toews is unsure of retirement. So, an interesting note there. And lastly, we're going over to a couple of trade rumors. When it comes to some trade rumors, we've got some very interesting ones. First, David Pagnotta was mentioned in the Nashville Preds. He says that the new front office has to start adding some more pieces whenever they do wind up figuring out who the new GM is. But on top of that, he said maybe the one guy that they do look to try and move this offseason is Jonathan Marchessault. It sounds like Marchessault is really, really unhappy with being in Nashville. So it does sound like even Pagnotta is mentioning this now. I think we've heard it from Sarah Valley. We heard it a whole bunch leading up to the trade deadline. It just doesn't sound like Marchessault wants to be in Nashville anymore. So it sounds like a trade will come at some point in the offseason. We have heard in the past he would want to go to a no-tax state, potentially to Montreal, where he has connections with. If he's going to a no-tax state, with Seattle has some interest, with Dallas, Carolina, would he consider a reunion back to Vegas? So we'll have to wait and see on that. But it does sound like Nashville might be a little more aggressive in the offseason, according to Pagnotta, and trying to add some more players instead of trying to subtract some more like they were trying to do at the trade deadline. But it does sound like Marchessault might be a guy who does not want to stay for whatever Nashville's doing over the next couple of months and may wind up getting dealt potentially before the draft. So that's going to be a name we have to watch out for, because I think out of all of the Predators names that have been out there, O'Reilly, Stamkos, Yossi, potentially if things go completely awry, I think Marshall's probably the most likely of them to be potentially moved. So we'll have to wait and see on that. Next, going over to Thomas Drance. He was talking about the Canucks and Nils Hoglander. And he says that Hoglander has not had an overly great last couple of seasons, but he does believe there are a couple of teams out there who believe they can get more out of Nils Hoglander. So that has led a couple of people to wonder, could we see a Nils Hoglander trade in the offseason? It's possible. Now, the Canucks are going to go through a rebuild. They need some more younger players. Hoglander is on the younger side of things. So I don't think it's a guarantee. I think guys like DeBrusk and Pettersson will be more likely. But I do believe that Hoglander might be another interesting option. I think he's got 2 years left after this year at a $3 million cap hit. He's a speedy middle six winger. He can play in the second or third line. He's very, very versatile. He can play on either wing. He's very, very fast. He can be a very effective skater. He wasn't overly good this year. He started out injured, so he missed the first couple months of the season and can never recover from that. So I do wonder if maybe for like a third-round pick or like a second-round pick, maybe something like that, the Canucks consider a Hoglander trade, which I guess is a possibility. It's something we're going to have to keep our eye on. I could see Hoglander get dealt. I don't think it's a guarantee by any means, but Hoglander is a pretty decent player, so I could see a couple of teams, especially ones who need some more youth in their team and some more speed in their team, trying to go after Hoglander. And he's not making an egregious cap at $3 million. For someone who can maybe put up like 15 or 20 goals as a third liner, it's not half bad. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, but keep your eye on Nils Hoglander, potentially a guy who could end up getting dealt before the draft happens in June. So we'll have to wait and see on that. And lastly, going over to the San Jose Sharks. David Pagnotta was also talking about them on a recent DFO Rundown podcast. And he says that the San Jose Sharks' top priority this year is to try and rework their blue line again. He says that the Sharks are going to be looking for 2 significant defensemen in the offseason to try and improve their team. Now, like we talked about before, they have a whole bunch of pending UFAs. We just mentioned Ferraro. There's Desharnais, there's Klingberg, there's Leddy. There's a slew of pending UFA defensemen on the San Jose Sharks team. And the only guys who are signed, I think, are Orlov, Mukhamadullin, and rookie Sam Dickinson. So they're going to need some more defensive bodies to insulate them. Pagnotta does mention Morgan Riley as potentially a guy who the Sharks could try and acquire. There was also some talk earlier in the year about Dougie Hamilton. Maybe they try and circle back on that, although Hamilton did nix the trade earlier in the year, so maybe that's an unlikely sort of trade. There's probably a couple of other guys. They were linked to Braden Schneider a whole bunch of the trade deadline. I wonder about him. There's probably a couple of pending UFA defensemen, at least on the higher end of things, who I think they could try and target. So I'm not sure who they'll try and go after, but there's a couple of options out there, both via the trade and the free agent market. for them to bolster that top four and make it a little bit better for next year, especially if they do lose guys like Ferraro and Klingberg. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, but I completely agree. The Sharks really need to rework that blue line with a couple of pending UFAs, and if they can add like 1 to 2 top four defensemen, they're going to be in a really good position to do some damage next year. So very interesting out there, but keep your eye on the San Jose Sharks as they try to add some more defensive help. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to tell for today. Once again, if you haven't already, leave a like, leave a subscribe, leave a comment, tell all your friends. The best hockey content on YouTube is right here at the End-to-End Hockey channel. So if you haven't already, leave a subscribe. 90% of you guys who view my video are not subscribed. Leave a comment. I would love to hear your thoughts on all that was discussed here today. And also don't forget to stay tuned for more live streams coming out later today on Tuesday, as well as on Thursday and Friday. So don't forget to stay tuned for that. I also do a blog, news, rumors, analysis, if that's when you check that out. If you really want to support the channel, I also have a Buy Me a Coffee page where you guys can go to make donations. I'll leave a link to it down in the description below. And if you guys really do want to support the channel, head over there, make a donation. It really does help with the channel. And also stay tuned for a video coming out in the very near future. God bless y'all. I'll see y'all on the next one.